Okay, I always feel like um, we should start things like this with a round of applause, maybe. It's not, yeah, it's not for me, honestly. It's for you for being here and for dedicating time to spend with all of us and to have a conversation and hopefully have a little bit of fun. Thank you so much for that introduction. I always feel a little bit more qualified when I get up to speak or say something after an introduction like that. Um, but like Alicia said, I'm Stacy Ahua. I own Usu Company Candles, which I started in 2020, September of 2020. And it is my everyday work, my all day work, not something that I intended to do. Much to my parents' dismay, none of my degrees are in candle making. It wasn't an idea I had early on in life. I didn't even consider myself creative, but it is where I found myself and genuinely say that it's the best work that I've ever done. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about that and how I ended up here. If you don't recognize the word Usu or my last name, Ahua, that's okay, because they're not English words, like Alicia said. My family's from Nigeria, so I actually grew up in the States, but all of our extended family is home. I grew up in a very dual cultural household. So when I started Usu Company, I wanted to make sure that I was paying homage to what was important to me. So everything that I do relates in some way to storytelling about our traditions or culture or something that's important to me and helps tell those stories and hopefully connects with other people who have similar stories and families and things like that. So you've seen it everywhere, hopefully at this point, as you came in kind of on your table. Like I said, I didn't kind of come into a career wanting to make candles or tell stories or anything like that. And it was really because of my own personal plot twist, complete change in my own storyline that I ended up where I am. And that's what we're going to focus on today. I think everyone has something like that, something somewhere in your life that changed a course that maybe you didn't expect, or maybe hasn't happened yet, but you anticipate and you want to be prepared for. And that's what we're gonna talk about a little bit more. Let's see. Okay. So like I said, this is who I am. This is what I do. I get to do some really fun partnerships with different organizations throughout the Triangle, including RTP, the North Carolina Museum of Art. And then, of course, I design candles of my own for my own line. That's me cheesing in the center because why not? And this is my family. So like I said, things that I do and create are related to culture. So that's me in the corner, again, cheesing. My middle sister, Rosie, my dad, Emmanuel, my mother, Mary, and my sister, Ember. And I really showed you this because I heard one time that if you show people pictures of your family while you talk, they listen more. So this is my ploy to get you engaged and a little bit involved and to give you some background again about who I am and kind of why I do what I do. Really quickly, raise your hand, nothing invasive, just raise your hand if you have ever worked on a project or maybe a design for yourself, or it could be a vacation, done all the detail work, like went down to the nitty gritty, coordinated everything, found people, and then it didn't actually pan out. Sure, right? Raise your hand if you've ever had a meeting or maybe a lunch date or somewhere to network with someone. You got dressed up, you got the childcare squared away, you got dressed, you put on the makeup, you did the thing. And then the last minute you get an email because they never text or call, it's the email, and cancel on you. Anybody? Yeah. Have you ever met someone that maybe it was at a networking event or a friend or another parent that you really connected with, kind of started a relationship with, you wanted to hang out, or maybe it's a romantic interest, and somewhere along the line, it just falls apart. You have an emotional investment, goes away. If you were on that one, I'm glad there's no heartbreak in the room, just me. And maybe this one really is just me, we'll see. You ever survived a pandemic? You ever just been in the middle of a global pandemic and things completely got changed from what you thought they were going to be? You thought 2020 was your year and it didn't work out that way. Something serious happens and just shifts the way you think about life. That's that's where kind of my story starts. I moved to North Carolina in November of 2020, or 2019 rather. And prior to that, you know, I will tell you a little bit about my background, but for me, especially at the beginning of my story, kind of where my plot twist happened, this word was at the center of it. So coming into a global pandemic and everyone working and figuring out their lives and how things were going to change, we heard the word pivot a lot. It was like one of the buzzwords of the year. And when I was kind of preparing for this, I thought about, again, kind of where my story started and how I worked through my own plot twist. And this word came back to me. It's not something that's been in my vocabulary a lot lately, but it came back to me. And I just put some quick definitions of what pivoting is: completely changing the way in which one does something, or beginning to run or manage something in a completely different way. And I think that's an important distinction when you're talking about a really pivotal point in your life, right? To me, this is like an instinctual, instant change. You go from one path to another really quickly. And it's a way to adapt and to try to figure out how to do the next thing. But it's kind of an instant thing, and it's kind of a temporary thing. You don't constantly pivot and try to figure out things. You make a sharp turn, right? For me, I found that navigate became a better word. So again, quick definitions: to make one's way over or through, or to operate or control the course of. So this is sort of the framework that I walked into my kind of plot twist situation with, not just looking how to make that quick change, but how to control what happened after that, to make it something that I could work through long term, that was going to help me not just in the moment, but to continue on and to figure out how to do what the change was. Because change isn't just an instant. It can last for years, it can last for months, it could be lifelong. So I wanted to navigate it. I didn't just want to turn from it, but learn kind of how to do it long term. So like I said, I moved to North Carolina in November of 2019. If you can't tell from my thick Southern accent, I grew up in South Mississippi. I was born in Houston, Texas, and grew up in South Mississippi. People say that North Carolina is the South. You don't know Southern unless you've been to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, if you know where that is. Very, very South. That's where I grew up. I loved growing up there. I never lived anywhere else as an adult. So moving to Raleigh in 2019 was kind of my first step out. Love to travel, but never actually established myself individually somewhere. So I moved here with a job. Kind of my background before I moved to North Carolina was working in politics and working in nonprofits. So I did a lot of the nonprofit work of community building, a lot of communication, fundraising, community interest, and then did the same work in politics, a lot of grassroots organizing. I worked as a strategist, so I built campaigns from the ground up, election day tactics, all of those things. It's hard work. Both of those are tough jobs. And I joke and tell people that I was saving my soul during the day working at nonprofits and then selling it by working in politics the rest of the time. But it was all kind of the same work of community engagement, of storytelling, of building something with people. But it was difficult. And when I moved here, I took a job with a nonprofit, a larger global nonprofit, and continued to do some of the same work. But I found that kind of at the center of everything that I loved, the axis point of my passion was community building. So that was something I was really interested in jumping into when I got here, really looking for how to take everything that I knew and engage with people in a new way, in a new city, in a new job, with a lot of other opportunities, more than you can find in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and what that was going to look like. So all of this happened pretty quickly. Within about 3 weeks, I accepted a job, packed up everything that I had. I got a 5x8 U-Haul trailer, and that had all of my belongings in it. And I drove from Mississippi to North Carolina, started my job the next day, and had a great time kind of in those first few months. November to about February of 2020 were great. I was basically a tourist in this new area. I did all the things you could do. I went to all of the restaurants. And then about February of 2020, things started to change a little bit, right? And by March, like most everyone else, I was then working from home, which I'd never done before. I've always worked with people, in front of people, out in the community, very face to face. So March 2020, we all go to kind of a work from home status. I'm still very new to this team, but I was one person that was a little bit younger than the median age. I had a little bit more experience than some of our directors on the team. So going back to the idea of pivoting, I was in a lot of those conversations. How do we take what we do that's in person and translate it to something that we can do virtually? I worked a lot with volunteers and community programs and support groups. So we had to figure out how to do those things really quickly. It was a lot of that sort of pivot point. Spoiler alert, I lost that job in about May of 2020 as well. So all of these things happen. I made the move. I'm applying everything that I've learned. I'm looking for community. I've kind of put myself in this position to really engage with this job. And that Zoom call with your director and the HR person pops up on your calendar, and what do you do? I'd never not worked before. I've worked since I've been old enough to. I've never been let go from a job before, so that was a little bit unfamiliar. But then at the crux of that, I found myself in a new city with no community, now no job, no kind of background to fall into, and in a place where we were restricted to being home, isolated in a way that I had also never done before. So it was a strange space to be in. And I will be 100% honest and say that I had a pity party for myself for about 48 hours. I really took stock of just what had happened and tried to understand it, because it was completely contrary to everything I'd done in my life and everything that I'd really tried to do for myself in my life. I always tried to be secure and have people around and build community and all of these things. And it was completely contrary to that at this point. This is one of my favorite quotes. And I remembered it at some point in 2020, and I came back to it recently because life never stops changing, but I came back to it recently. It says, the essence of life is to be found in the frustrations of established order. The universe refuses the deadening influence of complete conformity. Strong language. It's kind of an intense notion, but I came back to that again because I realized at that point that there is something really pure, something really important, something really dynamic about being at a space in life where everything changes, where you are frustrated, where you're scared, where you're unfamiliar, where you're uncomfortable, where you're upset. There's something about that that really strips away things that are maybe not important, maybe less important, maybe things that are unnecessary. And I found myself in that frustration very easily in 2020. I find myself in that frustration a lot, but it always brings me back to what the essence of my life is, what I want it to be, what I want to do, where I want to find myself. And I think a lot of people did that as well. You saw a lot of people change career paths, or maybe change relationships, or just find parts of themselves that were shaken up by this frustration because we didn't have the order that we are used to. And then, you know, I knew that I could get another job. I knew that I could work with another nonprofit if I wanted to. I did for a short period of time after that in 2020. I knew that I could always work in politics again, but there was something about going back to that same order of life that I also didn't want, kind of conforming to that same safe space, doing the same things that I knew I could do over and over and over again that I didn't want. I wanted something different for myself. But it took a lot in that situation to figure all of that out, right? Again, we're in very stressful, kind of unprecedented time globally. I'm in a very unfamiliar place personally. And you kind of have to decide what to do at that point. You either pivot and just do the next thing and kind of follow that order, or you navigate it. You find your way through it, you control the situation, and you do what you can to make it something that you can not just make your way through, but really advance, really push past. So I came up with this toolbox. These are things that genuinely I worked through during that entire transition. And I've worked through for years since then that I've kept with me to reference every day if I need to, or reference at those points where I do feel that shift, that plot twist, that pivot, where I have to navigate something a little bit differently. So there are a couple things I'll work through really quickly. The first one is to accept the suck. And this is a point of liberation for me, because as a child, we were not allowed to say the word suck in our household. It was a bad word. So mom, if you're watching, I'm so sorry. But it's to accept the suck. The second is to find the positive. Third is adapt your skills. And the fourth is take control. So accepting the suck. It's okay to say that things are not good, especially when you're at a point where it is a pivotal, plot twisting, mind-blowing point in life. It's okay to say that they're not great. It's okay to say that something sucks. It's okay to say that it's bad. In my mindset, I had to say that out loud. I had to acknowledge what was in front of me. But the important part of it to me is not to stay there, right? You can acknowledge what's bad. You can acknowledge what may not have gone your way, but you can't stay there. And part of that is because I do think there's an inherent value in having an objective viewpoint of those bad situations as much as you can. Maybe that changes over time, but even in my situation, I was able to look at a job loss. The whole reason I had made this move to another part of the country as a time to look at what I really wanted career-wise. When I really thought about it, I didn't want to stay in that job. It wasn't something that I would have wanted to do long-term. It's not something that I really would have been fulfilled in. I didn't really enjoy the structure of it. I didn't feel the impact that I wanted to make. And not to say that, I wouldn't have stayed there a little bit longer if I could have, but it was okay. It gave me a chance to step back and objectively say, did I like what I was doing? Same thing with my career. Did I enjoy politics? Did I enjoy working with nonprofits? Did I enjoy that community engagement? And whether it's a yes or a no, that's okay. But being able to say, I don't like what happened, but here's the good, here's the bad, here's what I can do with it, is invaluable. And that happens across the board. Maybe you do have someone that cancels on you for lunch, but that gives you a chance to take a nap, to rest, to take a walk, to do something that you needed to do otherwise. And it's a disruption in your day, but don't stop there and look at what else you can do with it. So kind of accepting that, embracing that it's okay if things are bad, but don't stop at that. The second thing kind of dovetails right into that is finding the positive. If you asked anyone, I don't know that they would say that I was an inherently positive person. I tried to be. I like to smile. I crack a joke. But I found out, especially working through kind of my own plot twist, my own life change, that my positive is really a spinoff of hope. So I am a hopeful person, inherently a hopeful person. If something goes wrong, my brain immediately says, we can fix this. That's okay. We can find a way. Everything is figure outable, right? But that had to turn into something that was a little bit more methodical, a little bit more regular for me. So one of the things that I try to keep at the front of my mind is gratitude first, gratitude always. So accepting the suck, things are bad, but what's good about this? What am I thankful for in this moment? And keeping that with me. It's an important thing for me to do personally, because I can get easily wrapped up in what's not great. And I need those reminders of what is good. So I try to do that first, try to keep it a consistent thing. If you can't do that, that's okay. It doesn't have to be permanent. It just has to be positive. So you don't have to keep the same attitude all day. Don't keep the smile plastered on your face if that's not what it is. But give yourself those moments to be positive about things that are changing or can change, or things that you can change in a situation that's changing you. You always have that little bit of control to navigate what you want to do and how it can affect you, if you think about it positively. And then making it a routine and saying it out loud. Spent a lot of time talking to myself in 2020 and subsequently every year since then. I spend a lot of time in spaces where I think out loud. And that has helped me tremendously, because I also find myself thinking about the positive things out loud. Maybe making a routine of, I know a lot of people will do like a gratitude jar or journal or something regularly that they can come back to give themselves that positive moment. I need to say it out loud. I have to make it real to me, and I have to hear myself accept positive things. So whatever it is, whether it's something that you practice to do first, whether it's something that you make permanent or you just make it a point to make it positive and you can move on, or it's a routine that you create for yourself. You have to have that positive element. And I think that's a lot of that is rooted in gratitude. Adapting skills. So this one seems like it should have been the easiest one for me. But it was really difficult. One of the reasons it was difficult is because I have a hard time identifying my own skills. So if I'm let go from a job that I was hired for because of my skill and I no longer do that job, then what skills do I really have? How do I find another job if I don't want to be in that same field? So I asked kind of these first questions. What have I been trained to do? I was fortunate enough to go to school and get 2 degrees and have had a lot of work experience, but what am I trained to do? What is the basic thing that I know that I can prove to you with whatever experience or piece of paper, or whatever it is that I know how to do? And I had to come back to that to assure myself that I could change my career if I wanted to, because I have training in certain things. What am I naturally gifted at? I didn't really know until, shortly after I graduated from college, what my natural gift was. And I didn't know that until my mother told me. We were working through some problem, and I think I was trying to apply to grad school or something happened. And we were working through some problem, and I was like, I just don't know if I'm good enough for academia to do anything. And so we talked about that, and then she asked me to help her with something. And I said, oh, well, we just need to do this, and we'll kind of do this, and we'll figure this out. And she stopped and she said, not everybody's brain works like that, right? I was like, what do you mean? She said, people don't naturally have the same process for problem solving and logistics and planning that you have. I had no idea. I thought you could get when you have like maybe a necklace or headphones that are tangled up and you have to find the end to unravel it. That's what my brain does naturally all day, every problem. I thought everybody could do that. I didn't think it was a special thing, but knowing what I was naturally gifted at really gave me some freedom in knowing what the world could do for me, but also what I could do for it. Because if it's not something that everybody can do, that means there's a place for me to do it, right? And I had to come back to all of these questions about who I am, what I can do when things are not what I expected them to be. Which leads into the next things. Who needs what you can do? Like I said, if it's a skill that not everyone has, well, I have to find people who need that skill and apply it to them. And I think all of these things were part of what I did in my work, but not fully. I didn't really apply what I'd been trained to do. I knew what I was gifted at, but where could I find an even better place to do all of those things together? And then what more can you learn? I did all of the online classes. I did all of the Zoom calls. I did all of the independent reading and studying and all of those things, especially when I was trying to navigate this plot twist. But it really was about, what did I learn about myself? Yes, I learned some other skills and got some other training, but what did I learn about myself? What else can I learn about the world? What can I learn about not just what I can do now, but for the future? All of those were part of it. So adapting your skills, knowing those skills, being comfortable with them, translating them, transferring them in those situations, I think is invaluable, because then the world opens up in front of you and you see that for yourself as well as a possibility. And then taking control. So again, I talked about the difference a little bit between pivoting and navigating. And I think navigating gives you a little bit more of that control that can help you push past that moment of change. So fighting against your fear. I've never been good at this. I've never been good at fighting against how I feel. And I know a lot of people will say, kind of a turn of phrase is do it scared or things like that. I've never been good at that. I'm terrified in this moment, and I'm trained to speak in front of people, and that's what I know how to do. That's my skill that I can tell you that I know how to do and how to help other people do. And I'm always afraid of it. And for me, I think fighting against fear was less about fighting against doing the thing, so maybe public speaking, and more so fighting against what I feared about myself. Can I do this? Am I trained to do this? Is this something that other people will want to listen to? It's not the act that scares me. I'm long-winded. I can talk all day long if you let me, but it's how I feel about what I'm able to do. And that was the fear that I personally had to fight when everything changed for me. I am capable of doing other things. So I have to fight that kind of inner fear of what I want to do versus what it feels like I can do. Finding your voice. So traditionally, all the work that I've done has been for other people. I can raise money for a nonprofit. I can design something for a candidate. I can do a strategic plan for a company. But in this instance, especially in 2020, I didn't have anybody to stand in front of me. It was just me, bare out in the world to figure out what I was going to do, what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it and what I was going to present. And that, I think, has been one of the biggest changes for me. I love to work behind the scenes, but there's something about that moment where you feel that frustration, that disruption. You're fighting maybe against that established order of things where you do have something to say. You have something to say about what's happened, how things have changed for you. And that's the moment that I think, especially paired with fighting your fear, you have to find what that voice is. And it may not be something that you actually use out loud, but even in and of yourself, you have to find a way to express who you are and what the situation has done to or for you, and be able to communicate that going forward, how you navigate what happens after that going forward. Keep evolving. I've been asked before what my piece of advice for other entrepreneurs, small businesses, whatever, what my one piece of advice would be. And I think keep evolving is one of them, as well as to continue learning. You only know what you know in this moment. And you may know that, learn that and know that for the rest of your life. But every next moment, every next minute, there's more to learn. There are other things to take on. You can adapt in other ways, you can evolve in other ways. And I think having control over what happens to you next, once something very unexpected happens, requires you to be flexible. It requires you to evolve in situations. It requires you to learn and adjust and adapt. And if you only do what you've only ever done, you're only going to get what you've only ever gotten, right? So evolving and letting yourself do more, learn more, change more, gives you more control about how you move forward. And then this was a big one for me. Again, everything that I love is about community. It's about other people. It's about engaging. When I lost a job and when the pandemic started, I didn't have any of that. I literally had moved to a place I had been to one time before, and that was just to interview for the job that I got. So I didn't have a community. And it was important for, frankly, my survival to find one. And when I couldn't find one, I made one. So I was one of those people that probably invited you to an online, like a Zoom happy hour, or just to hang out. We did work from home. It was like a work from home kind of chat. So people that were just working from home, I made a little graphic and I put it out there, and people that I knew from across the country joined just to meet each other and hang out. Did we talk about work? Absolutely not. But it was a place for us to be. And then that translated into the next phase of what I did for myself in my career. And that's translated into something else. But the value of community, in my eyes, cannot be understated, especially when you're going through something heavy, like a plot twist, a life change, a pivot point, something new that you have to navigate. People and resources and support make all the difference in all of this, but you have to be able to be comfortable finding that sometimes, especially if it's not immediately available to you. I've said a lot of stuff really fast so far. So this kind of leads me to, the whole backstory of what happened, losing the job, still being in North Carolina, having to figure out what to do next. That's my reminder of myself to stop talking. And that's how Usu Company started. So let go from this job in the summer. I kind of took some time to hang out and just see what was what, because there was nowhere else to go anyway. And I tell people all the time that candle making was on my lockdown bingo card. So I made banana bread from scratch. I took walks. I did the Zoom happy hours. I painted things, and candles were just another thing that were out there for people to do. So I ordered a kit online and just started doing it. And I found a real love for the process, but also the creative portion of it. So like I said, if I do anything, I do my best to honor what's important to me, where I come from. And a lot of that is rooted in culture. So I started Usu Company September of 2020, which was very quick. not business advice for me to start a business from scratch 2 months after you've been laid off from another one, but it worked out okay. And the catalyst for that, the first thing that I thought about was, how do I tell a story that's important? How do I reach people and talk about who I am and what I do and why is that important? So I found myself really loving the scent design process, creating really one-of-a-kind specific scents. So I said, what do I do with that? So every scent that I make has a story attached to it. It's inspired by someone, maybe it's a memory from home, maybe it's a person, that's my dad. Maybe it's a place, maybe it's a phrase, a Nigerian phrase or something from our tribe that resonates with me. So the scent is mirrored after the story of them. And named after the story of them. So I found a way to incorporate all the things that I loved, all the things that I knew, all the things that were important to me, add something to it that's universal that people can relate to, and created a kind of a creative experience for myself. So that's what I did. The first candle that I really made was fire for my dad, and a quick backstory about this and why it's important, and how his personal plot twist affected mine years later. My entire family's back home. Dad grew up there. He and my mom went to the same nursing school, trained together. At the time, this was probably the early 70s. And the village that they were in had the nursing school, and they're doing a lot of development. So a lot of new equipment, a lot of people coming to invest in that place. And there was a guy who was bringing a lot of equipment and doing a lot of the investing, whom my dad got to work with a lot. The gentleman was dependent on a dialysis machine that they brought to the village, which was the only one that they had at the time. And my dad is the one that trained on it. So they worked together a lot. So eventually one day the guy offers my dad a job, and my dad and mom have been dating. They know they're going to get married. And my dad is one of 12. My mom is one of 8. So, you know, as far as responsibility in the family goes, having a job and stability was important. It would have been great for him and the rest of the family. And almost 10 years ago now, I asked my dad about this story. I just said, I know the general strokes of how you ended up here, but what really happened? So he's telling me the story, and he said the guy offered him the job, and he knew if he took that job, he was never leaving. He was never going to get a chance to leave that village. He was never leaving Nigeria. And to his credit, he was right. None of his family has ever lived permanently abroad anywhere. So he's offered the job and he turns it down. And some time goes by, he and my mom get married. They have my oldest sister, and my dad applied for an academic scholarship to come to the US, and he got it. So he's at this point where he has a scholarship to come to the US, something that nobody in his family's done. He's got a family now and has to make a decision about what to do. So his plot twist, he left my mom and his then 2-year-old daughter, his 11 siblings, his mother, his career, and the training that he'd gotten, came to the US to accept the scholarship by himself. And that was the moment that changed not just his life, not just our life as his family, but an entire generation of people, because he was one of the first to do that. So everyone else that he'd grown up with, that they were friends with, that they may have gone to school with, figured out that there was a way to do more. And he was the catalyst for that. So it's a lot easier to go somewhere to try something new if someone else has already done it. You could ask, how did you do it? Where did you live? How did you get your visa? What's the work that you have to do? And he was able, in that moment of change for him, in that decision that he made, to create what is now a generational plot twist for all of us, because we've grown up with these families in the US. They're doctors and they're professors and they're engineers, and now their kids are candle makers and doctors and professors and engineers. But he took all of those things. He took something that could have been great, but he turned down. He took the positive of what could have been for him, even though he was leaving behind a lot. He took control of that situation and he allowed himself to really try something new. And when I started Usu Company, I said, well, that's my legacy, right? I'm doing the same thing. I get the chance to do the same thing that my dad did, to take something that might have been great, could have been bad otherwise, and make something of it. And that's how I started this business. And that's why he was the first candle that I had to make, and to really introduce that notion and that story of why it's important to look at these pivotal moments in life, why it's important to know how to navigate them, to know yourself in that navigation, but also know that it's possible to successfully do it. And success is a very relative word to you. So if that means getting your family stability and more opportunity, if that means getting another job, if that means changing your career for your own mental health, whatever that is, there are those points in life where we have to make that decision. And for me, following kind of these things that I thought about at that time, I've continued to come back to every time life changes, or I feel that shift or that tension. These are the things that I come back to, because they led me through probably one of the biggest pivot points, one of the biggest unexpected changes in my life. So that leads us, I'm going to stop talking now. Like I said, I've said a lot of things, but I did want to leave some time for us to, not for us, for you to talk as well. You have a sheet that's in front of you that looks like this. And this is kind of an opportunity for you to think about what maybe one of your plot twists have been. Maybe you haven't had one yet. Maybe you're thinking about making your own big change. But to look at some of these questions, I would love to know, usually some answers from you. Don't feel like you have to share them. But I'd love to take some time now just to go through a couple of them, and then have you think about them and write some down, and some things that you can consider for today. So the first one, like I said, gratitude first, gratitude always. List 5 things that you're grateful for. They can be benign things. They can be the fact that you had a good lunch. It can be that you have a job that you love. It can be that you're going on vacation as soon as we get out of here. Whatever it is, 5 things that you're thankful for really quickly that you can think of right now. And I'm going to do that too. The next thing, and this may take a little bit more time, what is the biggest plot twist that you've overcome in the past year? If you can think of one, and name one thing that it taught you about yourself. And I will, while you're thinking and writing, share one with you that's happened to me in the last year. I showed you a picture of my family, very proud of them. And I've always grown up in a very tight-knit family. My sisters and I are all 4 years apart. And I'll never forget when we were younger, my mom said, "You may not like me, but you have to like each other." So we always kind of banded together, whether we wanted to or not. And in February of this year, my oldest sister, Ember, passed away very suddenly, very unexpectedly, which has got to be the biggest plot twist of life, right? When something like that happens and it comes out of nowhere for you. And it has been an evolving, navigating situation ever since, as big life changes are. And I think one of the biggest things I've learned about myself in this process is that I'm a lot like her. And that's the best thing that I could have recognized, because as a catalyst for, she's a person that never met a stranger, walked into a room in the best dressed outfit and made the best impression, but also deeply, deeply cared about taking care of people, no matter what. And through grief, through the whole process you kind of have to go through with burials and finances and thank yous and memorial services, I learned how much more like her I am than I thought. And I found that my capacity for caring for people and for wanting people to have positive life experiences was more than I thought. And for something that can be so tragic, it was an important lesson to learn for myself, because I didn't think I was capable of that. She was larger than life, and that was her thing. But I have loved learning more and more about how I can be that same thing, how much I learned from her, and what that can change in my life, but also how I affect other people's lives. So thinking about something big that's happened to you, it doesn't have to be that big, and what it's taught you about yourself. Next, what have you always wanted to do, but been too afraid to try? I saw some deep breaths on that one. Like maybe there are some pretty big things. Again, that fighting through fear, doing it afraid is tough, but I think if you can find your way past that, there are things, maybe they're small things, maybe they're big things, maybe they're scary things truly, that you can work through that you haven't done yet, but you want to do. And the last one is writing your plot twist mantra. So there are some things that like I said, I've kind of developed some things that I say out loud to myself. One of those things I've already shared is that everything is figure outable. Nothing is really final until it's final. So no matter what the problem is, no matter what the pushback is, no matter how big the thing is, I tell myself that we can solve it. There's no problem that can't be solved. There's nothing that can't be at least amended to make it more comfortable or make it better or to help. So everything is figure outable has been one of my plot twist mantras. This is what life is has been another one for me. I think sometimes when things go wrong or go left, you think that it's a conspiracy in life, that bad things are just happening to you, but life evolves and changes constantly. So if you can figure out how to help yourself navigate those twists and turns, it's easier, because that is what life is. Life is not stagnant. Whatever story you write is very rarely the story that gets read as it is. So bringing myself back to things that remind me that life is hard and changes and continues as well has been important. And along with that, I mentioned too, talking about gratitude. One of the things that I really like to do is make a practice of things. So you have a candle in front of you. Guess who made it? Spoiler alert, it was me. I've made a habit of having a candle lit in my home all the time when I'm there. So it's a morning thing for me too. I like to wake up early. I like to light a candle. I like for that to permeate through the day for me. It's kind of when I think about what I have to do, what complications may come up. It's the same thing at the end of the day. What plot twist did I have to face and how did I get through it? How do I find myself back at a positive place to start the next day? But for me, a candle is part of that. It kind of cleanses what I don't need, and it helps me feel a little bit more rejuvenated about what I do need. My hope is that even in thinking through all these questions, all of the many things I've said today, that if nothing else, you end up here with a mantra that you can keep with you to help you navigate those big things, those small things, and that maybe you make your own ritual or practice of that. When something changes, when you feel that discomfort, you feel that disruption, you have words to come back to say out loud, maybe to remind yourself of, to put in your journal, whatever it may be. And then you have something physical to represent that and support you in that time. So no mandates on what you do with your candle, but I hope that it does become a point of comfort, a resource for you to remember things that can help you through those sort of plot twists and life turns, and that you find out a little bit about yourself and how you navigate that better, so that the next time it happens, you feel a little bit more at ease, you feel a little bit more in control, and you feel a bit more prepared on how to navigate it. That's it. That's all I got. That's the most I can do. Like I said, I know it's been kind of a long dialogue, but I think if we have some time to answer any questions, whether you have them or if you have added them online to the Zoom chat, I'm happy to answer any of them. Yeah.
So this is a two-parter. One, what's the scent of the plot twist?
The scent of the plot twist candle. I wish I could tell you. I led with my heart and not with with any specific guidelines on it, but I really I love a citrus base or fragrance notes. So there is a bit of a citrus in there. I love kind of the purity of florals. So the hope is that you get different waves of those things. Maybe they come to you at more important times, but there's energy in the citrus notes that I really love. And there's kind of a calming, cleansing part of a floral that I try to incorporate without making it too fruity or too floral. Balance. Second part.
Second part, I just wanted to share this. I like your idea of a plot twist. One of the things that got me through the pandemic was this idea of sometimes we see challenges like a mountain in front of us. It could be really daunting. And this is not my quote. It's from a woman named Brianna Wiest. She said, "One day the mountain that is in front of you will be so far behind you, it'll be barely visible in the distance. But the person you become in learning to get over it, that will stay with you forever. And that is the point of the mountain."
That is, I should have put that in my presentation. I wish I had that, and I wish I would love to have that and keep that, because it's important. Those things are so big when they happen. They are all consuming. When you hit something that there's nothing you can do about it and you never saw it coming. But the whole point of it is to work past those things and to figure out your way beyond them, not to be intimidated or conquered by them, but to overcome them. I love that mountain analogy. That's great. And thank you for sharing that. Yes.
If you wouldn't mind, going a little bit farther with your story. So you're candle making now.
Yes.
There's a fuller story to that. So it started with, family and things like that. You mentioned creativity discovered. I'm curious about the vision you have for your life at this point.
Yeah.
That's candle making is part of it, but it's not everything.
How did you know? How did you know? So he just asked about kind of the pushing further in my story about starting with candle making and then kind of where that goes from now, what I see that being from here. It's interesting because not too long after I started making my own candles kind of based on my family, I got connected with the North Carolina Museum of Art. So I became just a vendor or wholesaler with them on a very small scale. And they were really interested in the storytelling aspect of how I make candles and what they mean and that they have a meaning and a story behind them. So they just said, we have this first exhibition since the museum has been closed. It's our first large exhibition. This was in maybe 2021. Would you be interested in trying to make a candle based off of that exhibition? And I said, I'm interested. I've never done this before, but let's try it out. So I remember it was the Golden Mummies of Egypt. And they gave me plenty of time to research. They gave me research materials. I got to see some of the things coming from the exhibition. And they gave me free rein to design the label, to do all the artwork for it, and to design the scent, and to create an intention behind that scent for the exhibition. To this day, genuinely, I get asked maybe every month, every other month by someone to bring that candle back. It was a phenomenon that I really didn't expect, but it was so reflective of that art, that exhibition, that people really loved having a piece of that to take home permanently. So now that's my partnership with them. They have events and exhibitions that come regularly, and they commission a candle. I get to research it ahead of time. I learn about the artist or the artwork. I'll design a label for it that relates in some way to that. And then I design the scent based on that. So it's a world of creativity that I never expected, couldn't have guessed, and has evolved into really that scent design niche that I love. Same thing working with Hub RTP, which is a massive and really revolutionary project for this area. And they said, we want a signature. We want to be known. We want people to have that experience when they come here, what they leave with them, what they think about. So I got to work with their team, their marketing team, to create a Hub RTP scent that represents this area for anyone who comes here and invests here. So I don't know.
Brought one here, but we'll start having open houses at the marketing center over there. You'll see them on our Eventbrite. And whenever you go over there, we have them over there.
So I think set design is a big part of what I want to do next because it incorporates all of that storytelling beyond just making something nice.
Observation.
Mhm.
You have obviously an entrepreneurial gift to figure things out, make stuff happen. Creativity in that makes it work.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do my best. Yeah. Yeah. What made me choose candles? I couldn't tell you. I really just tried it, and actually I can't tell you. I think what led me to candles, one was just a general curiosity, like literally people were making, I tried to make soap, hated that. But I loved that one, it's a controlled process. So A plus B is going to equal C. If you put the fragrance in the wax, it's going to make, in a wick, it's going to make a candle. So my personality loved that control. But I also loved, I think, that you could assign specific meaning to it, that you could design a scent, the scent that reminds me of my grandmother's house. I can make something specifically like that. And that it can vary. There are different notes and there are different fragrances and everybody's nose is different. And those things can vary so much that it gives you some creative freedom. And I love that part of it because I don't think that I'm a naturally creative person. But when it has something that you can assign to it, I loved that that was possible. And then tying in storytelling, good or bad, you know, people have family, they have places they care about, they have emotional attachments to things, and scent is very closely related to memory. So I knew that there could be a personal impact, whether you're reading about my grandmother and it reminds me of yours or whatever it is. I like that scent was so closely related to something that could be universal for everyone to experience. And it happens more often than you think that someone smells one particular candle and it's full on tears, like not just the one tear cry. It's an emotional connection. And that's really neat. That's been a really neat part of seeing how people can connect or something that like that. Anyone else?